If you are starting a business, you should treat it as if you're going to war. Here are the 3 principles you need in order to go to war. For me, as I look at my business, I treat it within the 5 phases. If you've listened to me at any given time on any of the podcasts, I talk about the 5 phases of business. There are principles of war that overlay the actual principles of business startup and business perseverance. There are 5 phases of business: startup, perseverance, viability, scale, succession. When you're starting a business and you're moving into perseverance, which is the pre-profit phase of business, you need to treat it like you're going to war. Here are 3 principles that I use in my business as I'm starting it or I'm still in perseverance moving into viability. Number 1, first principle that you have to adhere to if you're going to war: you cannot play it safe. You cannot play careful. It's a smokescreen for fear of conflict or for making mistakes. Oftentimes people's fear is masked by them pausing, holding back, resisting change. So instead of jumping in, committing everything, putting it all on the line, they begin to play it safe. If you're just starting your business, you can't play it safe. You have to commit to a methodology and you have to go all in. There's a stat out there by the Small Business Association saying that 50% of small businesses fail in the first year of business. The stat that's even worse than that is that there are over 70% of businesses that start and actually never reach profitability before they go out of business. So 70% of small businesses start and never reach profitability. So 30% of businesses start and reach profitability. The big differentiator is these people that make up the 30% are 100% committed to the methodology that they chose. You can't jump in, then pause, then hesitate, then hold back, then change. If you do that, it actually limits the potency of the resources you have. You have to choose it, and you have to give yourself as long a path as possible to find success. So you can't play it careful. You can't play it safe. If I'm going to war, it has to be looked at as such. I must go all in. I counterbalance these thoughts with confidence. So while others may question, and by the way, the hallmark of a good business startup is they're doing something that either no one else has done before or others have tried and failed. That is a true business startup. They worked for an insurance company and decided they could do it better. And so they start off and do something that no one else has done before, or their previous company didn't do well, right? Or you're an HVAC provider and you go in and you do heating and cooling. And it's like you left the company that you were at and decide to start your own because you want to provide better customer service, better pricing, whatever it is. So like you're trying to adapt and change and give a different experience. And so you start your own thing, right? Well, the way that you counterbalance this fear is through external confidence. You have to show a level of confidence in what you're doing. And anytime that you resist or you hold back, it shows a lack of confidence. When you resist or you hold back or you hold a percentage back, all you're doing is showing your customer, your employees, and yourself, and by the way, all of the significant people around you, the people that love you and want you to succeed, that you're really not all in this thing, and you need to make sure that you're all in. The second principle of war is to strike first. Any person that has watched or has read anything specific to the art of war or war itself or war tactics knows that striking first is a crucial part of success in war. You can't wait and be reactive in war. You can't wait for someone to hit you first. You have to strike first, and you have to create the momentum and the succession that is created by actually exerting the first energy. The same thing goes with business. You can't wait till someone else is successful at the thing that you want to do. You must jump, and oftentimes you must jump first. If you know that the threat is imminent, you must have courage to strike first. The threat can be someone else taking your idea. The threat can be someone else in the same marketplace doing the same thing you're doing. The threat can be other business partners or competitors or whatever it is. But you have to be in a place where you strike first, where you go after it when you know the timing is correct. And the third principle is this: having a small contingency plan. Now, a great contingency plan falls into principle number one, which is you have to go all in. There has to be enough contingency that if the worst possible case scenario happens, that you have enough to still survive. As I've studied a lot of battles in history, one of the great battles that is great to study is when we stormed the beaches of Normandy. A large percentage of our troops, especially our infantry troops, were put onto that beach while very few were held back. And the thought was the reason why we held some infantry back was if all else failed and the Nazi army prevailed and killed every one of our soldiers on the beach that day, there was enough that we could put back on our borders to actually secure our own soil, that if, let's say Nazi Germany and the Nazi war machine were to succeed and were to come across the ocean, we could at least defend our shores. So we kept enough soldiers just to defend the shores, which was the worst possible case scenario. When it comes to business, I believe that you should have at least enough contingency to take care of yourself so that it's not complete destruction upon the loss of your business or your business idea. You have to have a small contingency plan. Is business war? This is the big controversial question that happens and people debate by the dozens on every podcast channel, on social media. And I will say that there is a clear distinction of when business should feel like war and when business is no longer war. In the 5 phases of business, you go from startup into perseverance. Perseverance is the pre-profit phase. It's still the grind. It's what Gary Vee calls the grind. You're still putting in the extra hours. You're still wearing multiple hats. You're still not getting paid for a commensurate rate for the job that you actually do. You don't have enough people to actually fulfill the mission. That's perseverance. Once you move from perseverance into viability, which is you do have the right people in the right seats, you do have the right resources to sustain your business. You've gotten rid of these single points of failure in your business, and you moved into true viability. Then viability leads into scale into succession. When you move into viability, you technically should then remove that feeling or that aggression that we typically take out in kind of a warlike manner in the startup of our business. And then it moves into a very different phase of business. In war, and here's the 3 principles of moving into viability that actually is the opposite of war. So you're very much warring in the startup and perseverance phases. And then as you get into viability, that's like peacetime, right? Like that's when you get to thrive. That's when you get to find and feel the success that you've created through the battling phases of business. So you treat the first two business phases like war. Then you move into a more collaborative phase, which looks like this. So the principles of viability through succession in a non-wartime or non-warlike manner would look something like this. It would be collaboration versus destruction. War oftentimes brings destruction. You have to assert dominance. You have to impose your will, right? Like you have to push the ball uphill. However, you get to viability and you start looking around at the people that are also successful and you get to move into this place of collaboration. In business, partnerships and collaborations with competitors can actually be beneficial. It's not just a mindset of you versus them. It could be, what if we work together and could we carve out spaces that are mutually beneficial? While war is about actively trying to destroy the enemy, oftentimes when you get into viability, the only enemy is yourself. In early phases of business, the enemy is oftentimes the person that's trying to get there faster. It's your true competitors. But usually when you get to viability, the big competitor you have is actually yourself. So collaboration versus destruction. Principle number 2 when you get to viability is customer focus versus enemy focus. The primary goal in business is to satisfy customers and provide value, not to conquer them like in war. If you are still out pillaging and plundering and conquering your customer, then you have misread how business should be done. And there's still people out there like that. There's a lot of businesses out there that I won't call out by name, but you know them the moment that I talk about this, in that it's like a conquest that they're trying to conquer the customer, and they're bringing back scalps like the American, cowboys, as if these scalps of their customers are something to be won and celebrated. And you see that on their sales floors. You see it. It's like the Wolf of Wall Street style, sales floor that's just trying to conquer at all cost. And the reality of it is if you move into viability and you don't put the customer first, it will be a short-lived success. You have to find time to place the customer first. If you want to outlive and outlast the competitor you have, the customer has to be first. Now, I don't always believe that the customer is right, but I do believe the customer has to come first. You have to focus on the customer. I'm going to say something controversial, and I know that a lot of W-2 employees wouldn't necessarily like to hear this, but it is the truth, whether it's controversial or not. And that is, the most important person you have is not your employee. It's actually the customer. Because without the customers, you can't employ the employee, right? You can't afford to pay the person. It's if I ran an electrical company and I said, well, the most important person on my staff is the person that goes and installs electrical services. Well, if I don't have customers, and if my customers aren't happy telling other customers and making more customers of that customer, right? Like that kind of the multiplication methodology, it doesn't matter if I have somebody that can install electricity, or electric components, because the fact of the matter is the customer has to remain important. Now, that's not to say that our employees aren't important. Our employees and our people are very important, and they're one of the most valuable assets you have, but your customers must come first. And then lastly, innovation and growth versus tried and true tactics. When we're in the startup and perseverance phase, we should not be innovating consistently. If you are still struggling to be profitable, stop innovating. Just do the things that make you successful. Hit your singles and doubles every single day. If what you do is you move into this innovation phase while you still are lacking profit, you're always going to siphon the profit out of your business. Hit the doubles and singles until you're successful. Then when you move into viability, you can go for the grand slam. That's the scale phase, right? But you can't, if you constantly swing for the fences and you strike out every time, at some point, you're just going to lose the game. Singles and doubles can still win the game. And we need to play for that. So innovation and growth versus tried and true tactics. When you're in war, you just do what you're good at, right? So like if you're at war and you're a country, and you've got a fantastic Air Force, but your Navy is horrible. You have broken down, busted ships, no guns on your ships. Well, in the middle of war, you don't say, hey, you know what? Let's take a break from what we're doing with the Air Force to go innovate and create new ships, better ships, more technology. No, you focus on what you have and you actually go do it. There's a great book out there that I push a lot, and it's by Horowitz, and he talks about this concept of why hard things are hard. He's one of the more prolific investors of our day, especially in the venture capital space, in the angel investing space. And he mentions this concept of 10,000 lead bullets over one single silver bullet. He says that wars are essentially won on 10,000 lead bullets, not a single silver bullet, right? And I think that many entrepreneurs are looking for that single silver bullet that's going to change everything. That's innovation, right? Like you're looking for this technology that nobody else has and it revolutionized everything, and all of a sudden you're rich because of this technology. No, in the beginning, it's 10,000 lead bullets. It's doing what you know to be successful over and over and over and over again. Malcolm Gladwell pays homage to this in talking about 10,000 hours to be a success, right? Or an expert at anything. It's about doing the same thing over and over and over again when you have success and proving that success. That's wartime. When you move beyond wartime, now that you are viable, right? Like now that you have profitability, you can move away from that mindset and begin the innovation process. What additional customers can I go after? What additional products or services should I have? You can begin the process of scale. And in scale, you're going to scale horizontally or you're going to scale vertically. Meaning that if you scale vertically, you're just going to do exponentially more of the same, sell the same product, or exponentially more of providing the same service. Horizontally means that you're going to add additional products or services when you're scaling, in addition to the one that got you to a place of viability. The problem with most entrepreneurs is they start the process of scaling too soon. They leave the time of war before they've actually moved into a foundational place of viability. This is detrimental because anytime you try to scale without viability, you just cause massive pain. You'll burn out your people. There's heavy frustration. And in the end, you're providing way too much liability to yourself and all those around you. Business thrives on continuous improvement and innovation, whereas war is often focused on immediate dominance. I would say, depending on what phase of business you're in, you may need immediate dominance, therefore doubles and singles, right? If you're in a place where you don't need immediate dominance because you have a level of success, then you should move into innovation. And by the way, there's a statement out there that says, innovate or die. And that's a true statement. However, if you're still on death's door, which is what startup and perseverance is, they're literally, you're hinging on life or death. Will I succeed? Can I pay payroll? Will I have enough money for next month? Can I pay the marketing company? Can I buy enough product? Is my cost of goods too high, right? Like, then you're already on, you're literally teetering between life or death. Well, don't push so hard that you ultimately capsize your own ship, cause death to yourself and your own company. Allow yourself to move into viability, then innovate or die, then push the envelope, then look for what's possible. That's the major differences between war and peace, right? And I want you to understand that this argument, while it's a valid argument, has to be made within the context of the phase of business you're in. If you are still treating your business like war and you are now past and moved into viability, then you're going to ultimately cause way too much grief, way too much turnover, and you'll prevent yourself from scale. A couple of quick stories that I want to tell to kind of help seed these thoughts in. When I was building my first advertising agency, I was in my 20s, was having a lot of success, reached kind of the $20 million mark plus, and really, really struggled to get out of the war concept. I was at war to build this business. I had my previous employer that once I started it came after me with non-competes. I didn't even know I had non-competes. I actually had to move my business to a different city because I didn't even know I was violating something. But to avoid the fight, I just moved. And it was war. It was everything. It was fighting for my clients. It was fighting for contracts. It was fighting to fulfill. And it was both selling and fulfilling at the same time. I was, selling and then writing marketing plans and doing activities for my clients that, I couldn't afford to pay someone else to do. And so it very much felt like war in starting that first business. And then I moved into a place of viability. However, I didn't change the way I operated my business. I had this methodology that I read years ago by Jack Welch, where he said, in your businesses, there's always A, Bs, and Cs. A's are the ones that are your rock stars. He said you should give them a raise and get out of their way and let them do their thing. He said Bs are the ones that can become A's. You should spend a majority of your time on your Bs, developing them, getting them to become A's. So you should spend your resources, you should put your training into these people, and you should really focus on your Bs. And then he said, and now you have C's. C's are the ones that most business operators spend the most time on because they're the squeaky wheel. They're always the problem. They're the ones that don't necessarily pull their weight and you're trying to get them there. They're the ones that are demanding your time, right? And C's, they have bad attitudes. They are always pairing up and causing drama. Their liabilities far outweigh their benefits to the company. And the problem is your Bs always get turned into Cs based on the time that the Cs spend with your Bs. And no matter how fast you work on your Bs to become As, the Cs, as you keep them around your companies, will always turn your Bs into Cs. the impressionable ones. And so you should spend your time with your Bs, promoting them to As, getting them to As, and you should just literally, according to Jack Welch, you should just move on from your Cs. Your job should just be to replace your Cs, constantly be looking for replacements for your Cs. In my early days, I took that as gospel, meaning when you walked out of my organization on Friday, there was a set of glass doors, and you were listed as an A, B, or C every single Friday based on your output that week. So if you were a C and you heard me talk about it, you thought when you walked out on Friday, oh no, like that means that Eddie is spending his time replacing me, and that there is no fixing my attitude. It was over, and I'd watch a lot of them just like never come back in the door. They just would self-select out. Like they wouldn't come back and wait to be fired. They would just move on, which wasn't necessarily bad. However, the environment that I created, the culture, the behavior, wasn't something that was sustainable. It was at all times my people had their resumes out to other employers. They always had their heads up looking for better opportunities because at some point they didn't know when they might become a B or a C, right? And while it was fine for the true Cs, what it did was it actually caused too much anxiety to the Bs because they could never fully have the time to develop into As because they were always afraid they're going to be classified as Cs. If they saw their name on the B list, they're like, oh no, I'm one step away from being fired. And so the aggressive tenacity of that business was too much. Again, people can't sustain wartime forever. It's okay to go to war for a certain period of time. But, at some point, if it just becomes a way of life, it's never going to get you to the ultimate success you want. Second story. I've spent a lot of time with Impact Others, my nonprofit, in India and in Pakistan. If you go to the border of India or Pakistan, they have been fighting for nearly 1,000 years. They actually call it the 1,000-Year War. You find that most people in India have a disdain for people in Pakistan, and most people in Pakistan have a disdain for people in India. You don't ever want to cross the border because it could put a target on you. But for the most part, once you get 20 miles away from the border on either side, no one in either country actually cares. If you go into Lahore, Pakistan, where we work, or Islamabad, or one of those, or you go over into Secunderabad, India, or Hyderabad, or Trichy, or one of the areas that we work in India, and you ask them about the 1,000-Year War, and you ask them, like, have you had any family members that have fought in this war between... They don't care about it, nor do they talk about it, nor does it matter anymore. However, if you go within that short little window, right, like the 20-mile window near the border, there's still conflict. There's still issues. At any point, there could be an issue that erupts there. The point of this is that they've been at war for 1,000 years. However, it has no bearing on the day-to-day life of their people. It's just a nuisance in the back of their head, and it actually provides what could be a very beneficial relationship to both countries. They share a common language, they actually have common resources, and they could be better if they could find a way to succeed together. In business, it's the same way. If you treat your business as if you were in war for too long of a period, you will lose the tenacity and care of your people. It will just become a new way of life. And that new way of life will always be one of conflict, and it'll never be one of harmony. But you also, over time, will lose the tenacity and the pressure and the kind of offensive nature of war if you hold into that state for too long. So I always say you have to have a finite time period at which you take people to war, and it must be a very specific directive that you're trying to get to. I think that this is necessary in business. I think that, well begun is half done. I do believe that there is a place for this. But if you don't take your people into a place of peace and prosperity, you're always going to have massive conflict, massive turnover, and then in the end, you're not going to have loyal, happy, fulfilled people that work for you. So as you move into this place of business, I want you to check kind of where you are. If I walked into your place of employment and I talked to your employees, I talked to the people that are around you, do they feel like you're at war? Do they feel like there's been too much conflict? Or would I walk into a place that hasn't ever had enough tenacity to find the growth and opportunity that they deserve, or maybe that they could have? Again, there is place for both. And I would say that yes, business at some point and in some phase could be like war. But for the most part, we need to create a warring type environment for a short period of time to reach certain metrics so that we then can move into harmony. We can move into what business really is created and intended to be, and that's collaborative, win-win situations, the ability for others to grow together, and ultimately to serve a greater purpose. For me, I want my businesses to move into that peace and prosperity place so that I can essentially give it away and do and create more impact around the world to impact others. So I'll work for a certain period of time. It's got to have an end date. That end date needs to move into peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity should provide some sort of impact on the world around me.
All right, first question. Why is this topic controversial of putting war and business together? And ultimately, why do you find it valuable to teach on, to expand upon?
Yeah, the argument on both sides of the fence are you've got these ultra aggressive, hyper masculine, dominant figures out there on social media today that want to treat everything like war. Like it's a zero-sum game. If you don't win, nobody wins. And while I think, again, it goes back to that can be important for a very short window, it can't be how you operate. I've operated a business like that, and I can tell you, after you get to viability, it's no longer fun anymore, and it's not an environment you want to live in. You know, I didn't want to go to work in that environment every day. Then you have this other side. The other side of the argument is, well, we should just collaborate. We should just get along. If it works, it works. We're in a capitalistic society, and somebody is coming for you. Somebody is coming for your customer, and somebody's going to try to do it better because that's the environment we live in, which capitalism does create sometimes a dog-eat-dog world where the more fit survive, the more the person who has innovated lives. And so you can't just treat business with a lack of respect. You have to have some tenacity tied to you. And so I think there's a balance here. And I hear both sides argued with kind of vehement intentionality of, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. Like, we all should win. And it's like, no, only we should win. And it's like, in the end, there's got to be some context for when it makes sense and when it doesn't make sense, because to some degree, I believe both sides are right.
All right, war principles. Don't play it too safe. Strike first. Have a small contingency plan. Peace principles. Collaboration versus destruction. Customer focus versus enemy focus. And then third, innovation and growth versus tried and true tactics. You gave one of when you were kind of stuck in war mode. Do you have any more real life examples of people who played it too safe, too long, and anything like that you saw that?
Sure. I'll give you one right now. If you go back to Steve Jobs versus Tim Cook, look at Apple today. If you go back to the balance of tenacity of Steve Jobs, where he was kind of a jerk sometimes, but also innovated and was willing to go to war with some of his competitors. Tim Cook doesn't have the same, my belief is that Tim Cook is riding the innovation and the, let's just say, tenacity of Steve Jobs. I think that Tim Cook is riding that innovation, and at some point, I think that goes away. I look at the stock price of Apple. They're still crushing it. They still have more liquidity than everybody else. They still have their product sales are crazy. But I'll predict if Elon Musk comes out with a new cell phone and he can figure out how to network apps that are usable and feasible, you're going to see a push towards the demise and downfall of Apple. And so many people may look at that and go, no, there's no way. If you look at I'm in a Mac environment, right? Like I've got my iPad and my Mac computer and my iPhone, and everybody in my world has iPhones, and I iMessage, and it's like, I get it. But in the end, there's been a lack of innovation. Where's the brand new product? The Apple goggles that just got put away? Like, where's the innovation? Where's the innovation been since Steve Jobs died, right? The iPhone that we're looking at today was still a drawing that Steve Jobs created 15 years ago, right? We have better cameras now? The AI that my iPhone has is truly no, it's not even as innovative as a lot of the AI in various other instances. There is no innovation. You go back to what Steve Jobs was putting out, Apple TV, the iPad, right? Like who knew that we needed a iPad, right? Like we had our laptops and our cell phones. Who knew we didn't need an iPad? But now all of us needed an iPad. It's like, what is it that Tim Cook is doing? And so if Tim Cook is not innovating, there is no innovative new products coming out, they will die. That is the nature of business. And so as I look at it, there has to be the variation. Tim Cook needs to take very seriously what Elon Musk is threatening, which is to come out with a new smartphone. And as a matter of fact, I think you better get ahead of it very, very quickly.
Strike first.
And I would totally strike first, right? And for me, if I was Tim Cook, which I'm not, I would be whatever idea I had, I would put it all on the line now. You're already getting threats from the enemy, and the threat is imminent. And Samsung is not going to dethrone you because it's never been able to. And that's not the threat you need to worry about. But you better worry about somebody who has already had success in overthrowing some of the biggest entities in the world, such as GM and Ford and whatever else, Honda. It's like, while they all said he couldn't do it, he did it, and he's got deep enough pockets to do it again. I would be very careful, like Elon, don't like Elon. Any guy that's willing to put all of his money on the fact that he can take somebody to Mars is probably willing to go after putting a cell phone in everybody's pocket. So if I were Tim Cook, shots fired, strike first.
Just to speak to Apple's innovation, I was in Australia in the early 2010s, and I walked past a room. There was 4 men in that room all huddled around something, just enamored, fascinated. And I like peek around, and it's like the first iPad.
Yeah.
And it was as if they had discovered fire. They were all like touching it and prodding it. It was crazy.
It was the very first touchscreen. It was crazy. And then, think about products like Apple TV. Apple TV set a pace for how TV and how we deliver content to our television, right? Like all of a sudden, now smart TVs had to be created because Apple TV set a standard. You just think about like all the things that Apple has done. It's not just the iPhone. It's not just Mac. It's not just the integrated systems. It's the iPad. It's the things we didn't even know we needed. Like Apple TV and the iPad. Like the iPad. It's wild to me. And another version of the iPad is not going to cut it. Another color on your iPhone isn't going to be the next big thing. The next camera that gives you 0.1% of something better or greater is not going to be enough.
Just to support what you're saying, Mark Zuckerberg was on a podcast last week where he took pretty clear shots at Apple's lack of innovation.
Yeah.
He's like, what have they put out?
Right.
You may have answered this question. I'm going to ask it anyway. What is the most common mistake you see business makers making in these principles? And what is your suggestion? You mentioned scaling too soon. Is that it?
No, I would say that the common mistake is this, and this is kind of the last point I want to make, is that there is a great bridge between both wartime, peace, and prosperity. And it has to be in place at all times, and that is vision. The vision has to drive where you're headed, and there has to be a clear understanding of where you're getting and if you're pacing towards it. The vision would be, it's like there's really 3 things, kind of mission, vision, values are kind of like all grouped together. And I think that that's really important. I like just saying vision because vision is like, I'm going to do X and it's going to touch this many people and this is where we're headed and this is the time frame in which we're going to do it. Mission is the tactical way at which you're going to actually put, feet to those actions. And then the values are the feelings and the ethos by which you're going to do them. Vision has to be there from the beginning. If you go back to the coffee company that I founded, we started with A-grade coffee, right? Like top 2% of the world's coffee. I didn't believe in bringing just another, low cupping score, varietal coffee to the marketplace and just provide another cool experience. Starbucks does that, right? Starbucks brings an inferior coffee bean to the marketplace and provides and charges a dollar amount based on the experience they're giving you, the white cup with the green label. They're giving you status. I wanted to actually give you a superior bean, a superior product. With that, the mission in the very beginning was about giving out cups of coffee, getting people to try it. But my vision was, when we first started this in North Georgia, which was north of Atlanta, I said, I believe that every person in North Georgia that would even consider drinking a cup of coffee deserves to try an A-grade cup of coffee in their lifetime, right? Like that was the vision. I believe they deserve it. Like if you're going to ever try coffee in your lifetime, you deserve to try the top 2% of the world's coffee. Why would you not try the best? If it's there, it's available, why wouldn't you try it? That was the vision. Now the vision's gotten bigger because now we're in Florida and we've branched out, in quite a few places. But the mission and how we do it, that's why we're at every festival. That's why we're giving out free coffee samples all the time. It's why we want people to try it. It's why we're educating. We want them to understand but our values, right, are still tied to honesty, integrity, passion, right? Like who we are and the ethos in which we do it. So when we started, the value, of what we were doing it didn't change. The vision didn't change. The mission to some degree changed a little, how we were going to do it tactically, but the vision stayed the same. So when we started, like war, like, man, it was guerrilla tactics. It was everywhere we could do. I mean, like if I could have, and I've said this many times, if I could have dove in the dumpsters of the local Starbucks to understand what their sales truly were without getting caught, I probably would have done it because I wanted to know how much did they sell and what was their average price per transaction. I want to know every little detail about that competitor that was right up the street. It was war. It was guerrilla tactics. I had no problem walking into that Starbucks when we first started that coffee shop and asking questions and, recruiting their people. I mean, it was hand-to-hand combat, full-on guerrilla tactics because we were at war. Like I needed to carve my place into North Georgia and sell coffee. Once we moved into true viability, those tactics I started not looking at my competitor as much as just looking at my customer and saying, what do you want? How do we derive that? But I would say that when I look at that first period of time, the vision, I believe everybody deserves a A-grade cup of coffee. I believe they deserve to try it. They need to believe they need to experience it. Today, even though we don't have the same tenacity and kind of warlike mentality, we still have the exact same vision. And that is, we believe that if you are out there drinking coffee today, and you hear the passion in my voice, like if you are a coffee drinker and you've never drank the top 2% of the world's coffee, you deserve to try it. You should try it. It's an amazing thing. It's why it is what brought it to life in my mind as I was traveling these countries around the world, and it made such a big impact on me to drink such amazing coffee, and I wanted to bring it back for others. The vision is still there. And so what has to happen is you have to bridge both war and prosperity, peace and prosperity time, with this value set that's tied to your vision. What are you? It can modify, it can change, it can get more grandiose, but to the degree that that stays the same, it's the bridge between both. And so I would say the biggest failure on most business owners' part is they don't sell the vision. People will go through war if they believe in the vision. People will make a transition into peace and prosperity time. And by the way, some employees just really love the war part. Like they want to go kill and plunder and pillage, right? Like they like it. They like the tenacity of it. But they'll also follow you into this new peace and prosperity time if the vision is succinct, if they understand it. That's the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs make. The second big mistake is scaling too fast. It's trying to go into peace and prosperity when it's still time to stay completely focused and hitting doubles and singles every day. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast and for listening today. love to connect with you further, and you can connect with me on social media at Eddie Wilson Official on any of the social media channels.